Tracy Doyle, welcome to Business
Thank you
Insider.
very much.
Thanks for your time. Interesting time. You are now, we've titled you our independent political advisor. You've got some history here on the coast, on the independent side, and through observing not a lot of campaigns, because goodness, you're not that old, but
Friends already.
yes, we are. So I've been here 8 years. I've seen the electorate change. You've been here a little longer. Tell me how you think the electorate's changed on the Central Coast.
I guess in terms of most of my political history and my experience lies in local government. Having managed the last two campaigns for Craig Doyle as an independent on Gosford City Council, it's interesting to see how, from an independence point of view, we feel that, in our opinion, that we're being squeezed out as independents. The party politics has really moved into local government, whereas, sort of 10 years ago, or even as young as 5 years ago, there wasn't as much party politics involved in local government. There was still an opportunity for independents to get elected in their own right, to campaign in their own right. But we've noticed definitely particularly in the last campaign, that there's a lot of rule changes, there's a lot of influences in terms of the big parties getting much more involved in local politics. And if you look at the last election at the local level, there was a lot of party politicking going on. And really the only two true independents that are on council, so to speak, are Craig as a purely independent and not a member of any party at all, and also Laurie Marr. But even Laurie is a member of Central Coast First, which is also seen to be a party. So really, the days of the independents just getting up and having a go and getting in there are unfortunately getting...
Yeah, and I don't think it's any different with Wyong.
No.
I think I'm not aware of any independents. Well, they may say they're independents, but they sit down and talk Liberal or talk Labor. But when it comes to issues with getting independents up, are there restrictions?
What there is there seems to be, from what we've read through the legislation and looking at the process, there seems to be rules for the parties and then rules for people that aren't in parties. So there's certain, I guess in terms of running a local government campaign, to put it into perspective, the local government campaigns that are run in our local government area, which is Gosford, are as big as running a state campaign, if not larger. You're looking at having to man over 50 booths across 1,100 square kilometres. You're looking at having to the cost of running a local campaign. I mean, Craig's last campaign cost us in around about the $30,000 mark. And I mean, that's a lot of money for an independent to try and have to fundraise at a local government level.
So does this have implications for what we're seeing, or what we're being presented with as options for the 26th, for Saturday week? I
think in terms of progressing through, a lot of people start in an incubator at local government level. And so I think that as people move through local government and look at maybe running for a state position or a federal position, yes, it does have implications, because your training area and your breeding ground of young, upwardly mobile politicians, if they're coming through the local government structure, will be jaded, because you won't have the opportunity to have those fresh ideas coming through. Those politicians that are independently motivated, they will be primarily from the two parties. The bipartisan choke is definitely in there. And so therefore, when it comes to a state level, when it comes to a federal level, you only really still got the two options of Liberal or Labor.
What's the impact of having those Liberal Labor machines on what we're faced with, the alternatives, the candidates we're faced with? Do you think, is it better for the electorate that we're working with machines, or do we need to see people and have the opportunity to see them come through local councils?
Well, definitely coming from an independence point of view, we definitely need some other options. The people that I've spoken to many people in the community, just friends, family, different people that I come into contact with through business. A lot of people are asking for or looking for almost searching for an alternative. And I guess the swing towards the Greens has been an indicator of that. People are disillusioned with the big parties, the Liberal and the Labor, the coalition. So they are disillusioned with the two big parties and they're looking for an alternative, and hence a lot of particularly younger voters are swinging towards the Greens, but sometimes that's not necessarily an informed decision. They're not quite...
It's for lack of...
Well, it's just for a lack of choice. And we've made some jokes in the past about a none of the above party. And I know that's very frivolous and it's a joke, but it's almost a bit scary how serious that could become, because the Democrats were probably as close as we come years ago to getting into having an option for the two parties. And unfortunately that's sort of unravelled a little. So maybe there is a future there for some sort of independent. There is the independent network. There is a lot of independents that are around at a local level. But in order to move forward at a state level or a federal level, most independents find that extremely difficult, and they're almost channeled or forced to have to join a major party if they want to progress. And that's where we're losing that contact with our independents and our people that aren't necessarily guided by the machine or made to have to make certain choices or caucusing or, you know, however it works.
It's a horrible... My issue is that it is a machine, and with any machine you lose the personalities of the individuals.
Yeah.
You know, I happen to be a fan of what David Harris has done. To see the opportunity for him to be perhaps voted out because of the machine that he happened to choose, I just think is wrong. And you know, equally we've got other politicians on the coast who have maybe been swept along by the machine, and we actually haven't. You know, they're going to assume significant positions of power based on their machine position rather than their own intellect or their own commitment to the you know, the region. I think that's
it's an issue,
destructive moment.
Definitely an issue. And the unfortunate part about it is too that some individual, even though people will still work for their community, because people get into politics not because of the love of the money or for the kudos. People get into politics, I believe, and I may be a little bit naive here, but I do believe people get into politics and they're interested in politics because they want to better their community. They want to see people, their area progress. They want to, you know, they want to have a part and put the people's views forward. And as an independent person and someone that's been involved with independent campaigns, it's very difficult. I see that getting lost in some of the big parties and the machine, as you titled it. It does get lost, and unfortunately, you're right. People have got views. They do want to stick up for the little guy in the street, and sometimes in those parties, I understand there has to be policy, there has to be government. The people have the machine does play a part, and don't get me wrong, you can't just pop your hand up and say, oh, I'd like to be Prime Minister. You know, you do have to have backup, you have to have the people, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the experience, you have to have the policy and the direction and the substance behind what you're doing. You can't just turn around and go, oh, that needs to be fixed or this needs to be fixed, which is what we're seeing, I think, personally at the moment. Correct. In some of the local you know, the political forums that have been around, people just spruiking off, oh, this needs to be fixed or that needs to be fixed. There needs to be substance behind how that's going to be done. There needs to be plans in place, and there needs to be funded plans in place. You know, people can't just spruik off and say, we want a very fast train, we think that's a great idea. Well, yes, it is possibly a great idea, but there has to be infrastructure and funding and planning around that. You know, we could all just turn around and say it'd be great that we all just live in this utopic society where everybody has everything that they need, but someone has to fund that.
Indeed.
There has to be policy and procedure behind that. So in terms of the machine, I understand that you have to have a substantial process that needs to come into play, but sometimes it's frustrating at a local level in particular, and even moving through to the state level, to see some of the independent genius that is chewed up along the way and not able to get through to the community. And then, you know, if Craig, for example, was to decide to move forward into another level of politics, either federal or state, again, running as an independent, very few independents are able to succeed at a state level.
Although we may see that change.
We may see that change.
If the guys make it work in Canberra.
Yeah, that's true. But then that was again, that was primarily in the rural seats, and again, there was a lot of circumstances that came together to enable that to happen. And it was because, again, I think the Australian community, perfect example, they were left wanting for choice.
Indeed.
They really didn't know which way to go. And
Right.
even now with the campaigns that are being running on regarding the state election from both the Coalition and the Labor Party, the lines have really come to the middle. Like, it's quite
Blurred is a reasonable, blurred I think is a complimentary description. I think lacking focus, commitment and purpose,
yeah, people
whether you're
just
Liberal or and that's why I think it's critical that voters take the time to learn, and we've got on our site as of next week interviews with all of the key candidates. Not meaning to do a plug, but I hope people take the time to look at the individuals rather than look at the machines and the parties. And
but on the other hand too, they have to make sure that their vote's not wasted, and look at where their vote ends up, and look at what the policies. And a lot of people, particularly you're getting along with your average life on the Central Coast, or you're participating in day-to-day life. It's hard to be really up to date on exactly what everybody stands for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that, again, we have to sort of
I just want
get the information to people.
Make an effort, indeed.
Yeah.
I think we may have had your rant.
Yep.
But have you got anything else that you'd really like to say? 60 seconds to say, okay, this is that.
Not really. It's just that we need to make sure that as we move forward, doing a Julia Gillard, but as we move forward, that we really do look at the options for the people and what's best for the country. And if there is a possibility, and I think that the groundswell is there, to start looking at an alternate to the two big machines. It's something it may be in its infancy, but I feel that it's certainly gaining momentum. And I think over the next few years there will be, mark my words almost, but there will be, I think, some changes in the wind in terms of independent growth.
Tracy, do you have a prediction? What are you going to put your neck on the block there? Where are the...
I guess I can't really. I would have difficulty honestly predicting for any other seat other than probably Terrigal, the seat of Terrigal and the seat of Gosford, to be honest, because that's primarily where I would feel confident. I think from all accounts and what I'm seeing, it will follow the lines of the polls at the moment. I do believe that Chris Hartcher will be returned, or will be there'll be a Liberal win there, and I think that in Gosford, I think that Chris Holstein will also come through. I think it'll be the Chris and Chris show. And I do, from all accounts, and from obviously the polls are indicating that as well, but I do see, in terms of the strength of candidate, in terms of the way in which they've approached their campaigning, I have seen it's been a challenge for the Labor Party in the seat of Terrigal, because they didn't put up their candidate till later in the piece, so they have sort of hit the ground running there. And I do think that from the community's point of view and the voters' point of view, I would hesitate to guess that we'll probably end up with the Liberal Party winning both those seats. So
okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
There
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for your time.
Cheers.